If you've ever endured an eye exam, I don't have to tell you how uncomfortable it can be. As gentle, patient, and professional as the doctor may be, at some point, your blood pressure is one heartbeat away from skyrocketing. Near the end of my annual exam last week, my doctor announced, and now we will dilate your pupils so we can examine your optic nerve. What? I froze, completely forgetting about that procedure that I hate the most. These gooey yellow eye drops are bad enough by having to endure hours of recoiling the pain from when light source is behind, and it just goes beyond what I could take that afternoon. So the day I tested, the sun was shining without a cloud in the sky, and that afternoon I wanted to go for a run, which would have been a nightmare wearing the film strip eye goggles that they give you. There's no way I could go through that test, but I had agreed to the appointment. Who was I going to go up against? The doctor? I had to follow instructions, did I? Could I advocate for myself? I'm here to tell you a big, loud yes, and to share a few training tips that can help you when you're afraid to make the case, like I was. First one is pause before you respond. In situations like this, you don't want to offend. You also feel like you don't have any control over the outcome. When this happens, you need to stop. Give yourself some time to process. Ask yourself, what do I need right now? What is at stake? Or what are my options? To do this, you'll need to establish a timeout that's neutral and buys you needed time. You might say, give me a minute to process this. Or simply you say, let me think about this for a moment. While you pause, you break eye contact, and you take a breath. Resist the urge to reply immediately. Doing that would be likely to either defer or make an impulsive decision, or maybe you come off as feeling defensive. You might also request an alternative option instead of coming up with ideas of your own. So where I was sitting in the exam room, I held my hand up and I said, wait, I forgot about this part of the exam. Can I get this done at another appointment? Here's a training tip. At the next week, come up with a line you can use to buy some extra time for thinking. Repeat it in your head. Use it as a decision-type situation, whether it's face-to-face, on phone, a Zoom call. Try to stay comfortable with the silence while you're considering your options. You can even practice this alone. Try using the holding line at least 3 times in real situations this next week. The second tip is to find an alternative. Advocating for yourself often starts with a simple question. What is the alternative? You might also present an alternative yourself. In my case, I was asking for a later afternoon appointment the following week. This allowed me to prepare mentally for the dilation and to walk out of the exam at a time that had less daylight. Once you've taken a moment to think, go ahead and present your alternative or ask for one by saying, hold on a moment, may I recommend an alternative? Or what are my options? If you have a strong reason for not accepting the current option, state the reason, but avoid making it into an argument or a debate. State your need, offer your option, and then just pause. Silence is powerful in these moments. Here's your training tip. Think of a common situation where you often need to advocate for yourself. Write down your response and practice it out loud without adding too much justification. Imagine saying to a colleague, I'm not available. Do you have any other time before 5 p.m.? The training becomes a benefit because of the familiarity of it. Practice in low-stakes situations so you're ready when the moment matters. Be your own number one advocate. The third tip I have for you is to be direct, but be pleasant. Being caught off guard with the less favorable option often triggers a defensive, protective, sometimes harsh voice. That reaction is natural, but if your goal is yielding a win-win argument or agreement, you might need to defer to a relentlessly pleasant and direct approach. You can do this by including a short line that signals appreciation or alignment. You might say, thank you for trying to accommodate me, or I appreciate you care and I need to ask for another option. I said to my doctor, thank you for being thorough with the exam. However, the dilation is not going to work for me today. The words are direct and pleasant. In my moment, it might feel tempting to say, oh, no, you don't. But that almost guarantees the conversation will take a harder direction. For this balance of directness and politeness to land well, your nonverbals and intonation matter. Take notice. Are you turning statements into questions and sounding unsure? Are you emphasizing the word not or sounding aggressive? Your training tip here. Ask a trusted friend to observe you in a meeting or in a conversation and give you some feedback. If you use artificial intelligence as a tool, you can set up a role play situation and ask whether you sound direct and pleasant. Tools like LinkedIn role plays or Udemy can help you practice both verbal and in writing. Review any feedback carefully. Nuances such as these can be learned, and all this is a trainable skill. My next tip is to say more with less. Self-advocacy does not succeed by over-explaining a technical battle I have myself. Over-explaining muddles your message and reduces the impact of silence. When you make a clear statement and you pause, you give the other person time and space to respond. Context matters, of course. If you're asking for an accommodation, some explanation may be appropriate. For me, it was discomfort with dilated pupils in the sunlight. I didn't want to mention the afternoon run, of course. Here's your training tip. Work on noticing when you start over-explaining or when you ask someone who knows you well to point out when you do it. My husband does that all the time. Written communication and phone calls are often easier to practice restraint. Face-to-face conversations are the setting where over-explaining tends to show up most often, at least for me. So pay attention to when it happens, with whom, and why. Awareness is part of the training. Becoming a stronger self-advocate. Advocating for yourself is not about being confrontational or difficult. It's about clarity, choice, and self-respect. When you pause, look for alternatives, communicate directly and pleasantly, and you say more with less. That's when you're not just managing a single interaction, you're strengthening a skill that applies to so many situations. And like any other skill, self-advocacy improves with training. Missed opportunities to practice will hold you back, and even awkward efforts are progress. Each attempt will build muscle memory for the next situation when you're caught off guard. You don't need to get it perfect. You simply need to practice it.